Welcome to Carefree and Conscious, paranormal and profound authors with stunning true stories. If you like this type of content, be sure to subscribe. I'm your host, Susanne Wilson, the Carefree Medium and Intuition Educator. Today on Carefree and Conscious, Death Will Never Do Us Part, a tea time panel of 3 guests, and each is a widow. Or you might say they are afterlife wives. Has anyone you love physically died? Do you find yourself dreading holidays, birthdays, anniversaries, and other special occasions? Although our panelists are widows, one is also a bereaved parent. What they share can help anyone who misses loved ones and wants to make direct contact. In alphabetical order, our guests are Diane Calderon, Joy Collins, and Mary Beth Span-May. Diane Calderon's book is Living and Loving Life All Day, Every Day. She's been George Norrie's guest on Coast to Coast AM and appeared on Amazon Prime in the documentary, along with my students and me, called Life to Afterlife, I Want to Talk to the Dead, produced by Greg McMahon. Joy Collins is a notable author of women's fiction, as well as the author of the nonfiction book chronicling her ongoing relationship with her husband in spirit, entitled I Will Never Leave You. Mary Beth Span-May founded and leads, along with William Murray, the group Love After Life. The group helps partners maintain direct connections after one partner transitions into the spirit world. Mary Beth, Joy, and Diane each shares how their beloveds come through to them in amazing ways and how you can work to obtain quality direct connections yourself. And now, Carefree and Conscious, Death Will Never Do Us Part. Diane, Joy, Mary Beth, welcome to Carefree and Conscious. You're going to have some amazing things to share about how your relationship with your partners continue across the veil. And people kind of think it's imaginary or, oh, good for you. I'm so glad that you think that that dream was really a visit. And they just sort of pat you on the head a little bit. And so we're here today because holidays are coming, but there's also birthdays, anniversaries, special, significant days, and you miss them every day, no matter what, a plain vanilla day. Before we get into some of the accounts of your contact, which are known as ADCs or after-death communications, let's hear a little bit about your relationship. I'm going to go to each of you. So, Diane, if you'd like to start, tell us about Sal.
Well, my husband's first name was Sal, short for Salvador. I met him December 2nd, 1975. So it's been 50 years coming up. Um, we met because we were both hired at a new program for job training down in the county in the Phoenix area. And I remember walking in the door and getting to meet the people. And there's this handsome fellow sitting in a corner, and he smiled this beautiful smile. And I thought, well, who's this guy? And was introduced to him and thought, well, he's pretty nice. 2 years later, we started dating, and 3 years later, we were married. We were married for 36 years. He passed over in January of 2016, so I'm coming up on that 10th year anniversary.
And were you working or retired or semi-retired when Sal made his transition?
When he made his transition, I had been retired for a few years. He had retired way before me. So, yeah, I was retired and I was able to be here to help him through his transition.
Okay, thank you so much. Joy, a little bit about John.
John is my husband. I met John in 1976. I was hired to be the school psychiatric nurse at a day treatment center in Pennsylvania, and John was one of the therapists there. And so I knew him for a couple of years as a coworker, a friend, before we actually started dating. After I was divorced from my first husband, John and I started dating. We moved in together about 2 years after we started dating, and we were married a year after that. John passed away suddenly at the age of 67. We were vacationing in New York, and he passed away in his sleep. We would have been married 29 years that year, but he's still here.
Love that. Thank you. And Mary Beth, Paul?
Yes, yes, my beautiful husband, Paul. Paul and I were went to the same high school in Buffalo. We grew up in Buffalo, New York, and we went to the same high school and dated in high school. But on our very first, in 1970, that was. So it's 55. We just celebrated this little anniversary 55 years ago. Hard to believe. But it was so cute because on our first date, he said to me, I really like you and I want to go steady and we'll trade high school rings, if you want. But I really want to date a lot of people before I settle down. So don't count on me for forever. So I said, okay. And I proceeded to totally fall in love with him, and then eventually we just had the most lovely, sweetest teenage romance. And then one day he broke up with me as expected. But I remember thinking, I looked out of the front of my house, the window, and he's walking away from my house. But I remember thinking, if you love somebody unconditionally, you want for them what they want for themselves. And if this is what he wants, I have to honor that. And then fast forward 35 years, long story, but we eventually got together 35 years later. And we had a long distance relationship for a while because I had my children, I have two children, and I had my children much later than Paul and his ex-wife had their children. So his kids were up and out, and my kids were still in high school and college. Eventually, I was able to move to Michigan. He lived in Michigan then, and to be with him. But I wasn't even there a year before he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and we had a cancer journey, and then he passed. And that is almost 10 years ago. He passed in February 2016, but he is with me all the time.
You were together metaphysically for decades. How long were you actually married?
We were really only married a brief time. We were married because we got married when he was diagnosed, and then he was ill for on and off for 18 months before he passed. So that's how long we were married.
But what everyone has in common, I assert, and these three women assert, is that you have the ability to directly connect with your loved one in spirit. And just think of that bond that you have and all the times that you've shared. If you are of the belief that we plan to meet before we're born, not necessarily that we plan every single thing in our lives, but that we plan to get together, then maybe you might be subscribing to the theory that you planned that one would part before the other. Is that something that any of you believe? Do you believe that that was pre-planned?
Well,
I've had several past life regressions with you, and in one of them, it came out that John and I have done this at least with us actually being married. We've had relationships that were other than spousal, but we've been married 7 times, and we've kind of taken turns who leaves first. Last time I left first. This time it was John's turn to leave first.
Okay. Does that give you comfort?
Somewhat. I remember sitting in the hotel room waiting for the EMTs to arrive after we had called in the 911 after I had found John. And I was talking with him. And even though at that time I had no idea how I was going to do this, I mean, this was 15 years ago when this happened, and I've hopefully learned a lot since then. But I remember telling him, I want a do-over. I know I agreed to this, but I changed my mind.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
So on
Anybody
some
else?
level, I knew.
There's a knowing that you had a knowing. All right. If people can follow that, and I think you can. Anybody else want to weigh in on the pre-birth planning aspect?
yes, I'll weigh in quickly. I really don't know. I mean, I don't know for sure, but it
This
did give
says,
me to think that before we got here, I have a very big imagination. I imagined Paul and I sitting around a table with other loved ones and talking this out and, figuring out all the details and that, if he would go first and I would stay behind. I don't know. Somehow that did give me comfort. I don't know if that's really what happened. I do believe that people plan certain aspects of their life. I don't believe they plan every single second of their life. And I also think that when people plan their life, once they get here, if whatever's, they've planned, they don't really like so much, that you can always engineer your life from this perspective. But yeah, I'm not sure, but I found comfort in that and thinking that it was a plan that we both had.
When we look at some of the theories that people have posited, that we really have to sit with them and use our own discernment, our own inner voice. And I think we can even ask our loved one, hey, do you have a minute? I've got a question for you. Let me feel in the body. What do you think? Was this part of something that we set up before we came? And I mean, you can use that method of feeling their reaction in the body for so many different questions, but some people don't want to hear that at all. And some people cling to that as a great comfort to know, look, this was going to happen no matter what, especially when someone is gone suddenly. Now, with two of you, with Mary Beth and Diane, you knew that your husbands were in the transition process. With Joy, it was a little bit different. Can you tell us a little bit about how that went down for you when John left?
There were, well, on several levels. I mean, there was literally a post-traumatic stress syndrome that I went through. I actually going into EMDR therapy for a short time because I was getting flashbacks of finding John. But going back to that knowing, I remember when I was having that conversation in my head, again, when I was waiting for the EMTs, I knew that our relationship had been and was so strong on so many levels that wasn't the end. I remember thinking that this was going to be the next chapter. It wasn't going to be a very happy chapter in some respects, and it was going to be hard, but it was not the end. That if anybody could keep up the relationship, I knew we could, because we were like that.
Wow. Okay. So that just grabs you by the heart where your husband's making his transition. You didn't know it was coming, but you have an instant knowing, like this is another chapter in our relationship. Joy, where did that come from for you?
I don't know. I was definitely on a soul level. I remember thinking a few months before John passed away, John had been sick off and on. He had some cardiac issues and some cancer issues, but he had recovered from all of that. The only thing I can think of is that it was on a soul level. It wasn't intellectual or conscious. Prior to John's passing, those few months before he passed, I was having dreams that were showing me I was alone, I was widowed. And I'd wake up and go, well, where did that come from? Everything's fine. I just was having these premonitions kind of thing, but not realizing that they were premonitions. Not that it changed. I mean, the shock was still there, and it certainly wasn't easy.
Yes, 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 yes. The shock is there. And I love that you say that feels like your soul was preparing you for the separation. There are so many people that I've spoken with that say they had a weird feeling that a loved one, whoever it was, not just a partner, something was going to happen to them. And then they feel guilt, like, was it incumbent on me to stop whatever that was from happening? And it's like, no, never. It's never that way. It's like a little bit of a preparation. All right, so at this point, what I want to do, and the people that are listening, or those few that watch on YouTube, I know I have a lot of listeners and few on YouTube. If you want to see these ladies, go to my YouTube channel. But right now, I would like us to get our teacups. We're going to offer a toast to Sal, John, Paul, and their beautiful wives, and all the love that you share, and toast our tea and have a sip. Cheers. My tea is Harney and Sons Paris. And I take those tea bags all over the world with me. I just got back from Switzerland and Spain, and I had my Paris tea bags with me. What are you drinking, Diane?
I'm also drinking a Harney and Sons tea. I believe it's the cherry blossom one. And the teacup was special to me because one of the first Christmases I had after marrying Sal, he had bought me a tea set, and it included the little teapot and six little cups. And it was from one of those handmade hippie type shops. And I've had it all these years. So it's pretty old, and it is my favorite teacup.
Nice. And Marianne, what are you toasting with?
Well, I have my Big Love tea. It's actually a coffee mug, but it's special to me because right after Paul died, like most people, I felt totally shattered. And I was trying to find some little crumb of comfort. And I went to my local craft store, Michael's, I think it was, looking for a journal. I thought I'd find a pretty journal. And I didn't like their journals. And I went around I don't know, a stand of merchandise, and I saw this. Now, and this is so meaningful to me because I had been married twice before to two other lovely men, not at the same time. And but those marriages didn't work out. And the whole time I kept saying, I just want big love. That's all I want is big love. I want it to be like easy and liquid love. And that's what I had with Paul. We never had we there was just no snags. We just so easily loved each other and got along together. And then when I was in the store and I went around the corner of this display and I saw this, I just took it as a sign. And then after that, I kept getting more mug signs. I'll just show you one other one quickly. Um, Paul, when we had our long distance thing, every morning he would email me, "Good morning, beautiful." And so this was the Valentine's Day after he passed a year later. And I was looking for something I could get for him for Valentine's Day, like something in the store. And I came around the corner and I saw this mug, "Good morning, beautiful." And it came with this one, "Good morning, handsome," which is what I used to say to him. I was just getting signs, signs can come in all different ways. And so that's what I consider my special signs.
And Joy, what are you drinking?
I had Twinings, chamomile, honey, and vanilla. And
Yum.
this is a tea set that I inherited from my mother-in-law, from John's mom, that she left me. There are 6 cups with saucers, and each one is a different flower.
I really hope that people listening understand what we're doing here. Where I'm coming from here and what these ladies are trying to share with you is that you can interact and celebrate your partner, your loved one that you're missing, by little things like this, little things that you do, that coffee mug, that teacup, that sitting down and taking time. I don't know about you guys, but I forget to take a few minutes during the day. So what I've done is I've set aside Sunday as like open mic Sunday, and my loved ones that want to drop in and visit can do that. But there's just so many little things that you can do. Now that we've established that all three of our panelists have very close soul partner relationships, and that I've told you that they have received signs and symbols and what we call ADCs, or after death communications. I know a little bit about your histories and some of the amazing things that have happened, but I feel my guides are saying, Mary Beth is ready. Mary Beth wants to share. Uh, can you give us a couple of the most amazing things or most comforting things that have happened between you and Paul since he made his transition?
Paul, my lovely Paul. I love you, Paul. Paul was not metaphysically minded. Is brilliant. He holds 3 separate college degrees, and he was very scientific. And we had agreed early on in our relationship to just respect each other's belief systems. But Paul knew that I was a big follower of Abraham Hicks. And so one time I asked him if he would go to an Abraham Hicks gathering with me. And for those who don't know, Abraham Hicks, Esther Hicks channels a group of non-physical teachers named Abraham, and they teach about the law of attraction. And so Paul, who was willing to anything I wanted, he said, sure, babe, we'll go. So we went and we listened to Abraham, half a day or whatever it was till 1 in the afternoon. And when it was done, I said to him, "What did you think?" And he said, "Well, they didn't say anything I disagreed with." So I just left it at that. And even when he became ill, I never talked about, um, we kept our focus really on just the moments, the precious moments that we had when he was feeling better. He had a little time during that 18 months, times where he felt more like himself, and we took advantage of those. And I thought I loved him as much as one human being can love another. But when he became ill, I loved him even more. And then when he passed, I loved him even more than that. And he had a long illness, obviously. And at the very end, he said to me this sweet little thing. He said, um, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I'm not afraid to die. And I just thought it was so sweet. And I did not say to him, "Oh, no, 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 no." I said, "Okay." I said, when that happens, um, will you send me a sign?" And he said, "If I can, I will." And then I said, "And when it's my turn, will you be there to meet me?" And he said, "If I can, I will." And so I was satisfied with that. That was at least, we brought that together. That was the longest, biggest discussion we had about metaphysics. So not long after that, literally, a day or two after that, he went into hospice and only was in hospice a day and a half before he passed. So he was really at the end of his life. And I was sitting there holding his hand, and I was kind of numb. Like I wasn't crying or anything, but I could tell he was dying because his fingertips were turning blue and the tips of his ears, and that, his body was losing oxygen to its extremities. And I think I was probably in shock. But the second he exhaled his last, I can't even really describe it even. It's just that it was so powerful. The energy whooshed out of the top of his head. And I didn't see anything like, a mist or anything like that. But it was so pronounced and so distinct that I remember like not being upset for a second. I went, it was so shocking. And I held on to that. I consider that my moment of grace. And then when we came home from hospice that same night, we walked into, Paul was renovating a bank building into our home. That was a whole other thing about him. He loved renovating homes and wanted to renovate a commercial building into a home. So we called it Manx Bank. And we came home to Manx Bank, his sons and I, and we walked in, and Paul's reading lamp right next to his desk was blinking a million miles an hour, on and off, on and off and on. And I just thought, oh my gosh, these are such strong signs. And of course, I've gotten many other signs after that. But that whooshing out of the head thing was shocking to me and undeniable, and the far and beyond the most metaphysical sign that I have gotten from him. So that always, kept me going.
People talk about shared death experiences, and that sounds like a form of shared death experience where you bear witness to his energy transforming. Uh,
Yes.
has anything like that ever happened to you before or since?
No, no. And I've never been with anybody as they were dying or when they died. My parents both have passed, and I was en route to get to them, but I didn't get there in time. Um, so this was really the first time I ever was with somebody who was dying, and it was really beautiful.
Well, I'm going to come back to you and talk about how you keep the communication going. But man, he started from day one, which is amazing. Thank you for that. Diane, what would you like to share?
There's a lot to share, but I'll try to narrow it down to two kind of significant moments. One of them would be after Sal had passed. He had dementia, and it was a process of him passing away. And there was a hospice program that he was enrolled in, and he passed at home. A few months after he passed, the hospice program was doing an annual event for people who had passed away the year before, and it was a release of monarch butterflies. They had apparently collected them from some company, and they had a certain date where they would release these beautiful butterflies. Now, I live in Arizona, and monarchs aren't a common thing in this state. So I go to the ceremony, and it was beautiful to see them fly off. A few days later, I'm sitting at home, and it's a nice morning, and I'm sitting outside, and I was thinking, Sal, I'd sure like to have a sign. It would be so cool to see, like, maybe a beautiful butterfly. Suddenly, I see a butterfly fluttering along in front of the yard, not far from where I was sitting. It fluttered around, it landed on a tree that we had planted in his honor, and then it fluttered close to me and flew east, and it was a monarch butterfly. And I could only say it had to be one of those that we had released, and it flew 20 miles to my house because I had asked Sal for a butterfly, and he showed it to me that day. So that tickled me quite a bit.
Wow.
Um, that was amazing. Another amazing sign, I think, is when we had started dating, I was still unsure if this was going to be a relationship that I really wanted to pursue. I was kind of hesitant. I'd been married before and that hadn't worked well. And Sal was older and he'd already been married. He had some 3 kids at the time. And I remember stepping outside one night after we'd had a date, and I'd looked up at the sky and I said, God, oh God, am I doing the right thing? I could use a sign. And a big falling star fell down right in front of me, just like boom. And I thought, oh my God, that's a great sign. So a falling star was a symbol to me of God telling me it's okay to marry Sal. All right, cool. So years later, Sal has passed. His daughter, my stepdaughter, lives in another state and she comes to visit me from time to time. And one day we were outside and it was nighttime and the sky up here is beautiful and it was dark. And I happened to tell her that story about how, I knew it was going to be your dad when God sent me this falling star. And she said, oh, that would be so nice. Do you think dad could send us a falling star? She no sooner finished saying that than 2 meteorites flew from north to south right over us. 2 trails parallel flew right over us. And we're both like, oh my God. And she was so tickled. She's like, Dad, that was awesome. I mean, you couldn't have timed it better. So I think that was a pretty cool sign. Meteors, falling stars, or when I see them, I think of Sal, and I think he's sent them a few more times than just that night with Patricia and the night that I asked God if this was the right course of action. So
You think
there's 2.
it was like one for each of you?
Yes, I think so. One for each of us, and just like right over our heads. You can't make that up.
Nice, 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 nice. Love that. Joy, what would you like to share?
Um, John was really pretty, even though his death was unexpected, he was really pretty good at sending signs right from the get-go. Like I had said before, we were in New York City and we had been scheduled to leave for Arizona that Monday morning, and John passed during the night, Sunday night into Monday. So most of Monday, I was at my cousin's house, her apartment in New York City. We're making phone calls and changing flight reservations and notifying people and all this kind of stuff. And I just had this driving need to get home. They were asking me, do you want to stay over one more night? And I said, no, 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 I just have to get home. So around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we go to the airport. I go up to the to check in, and the woman behind the desk says, well, there was something wrong with your plane, and it's going to be several hours before you can leave. And at that point, I'm like, now what? And so we explained to her what the situation was, and she said, okay, I can get you on a different flight. I'll check your luggage in, but you have to go up here, go on the tram, go down there. I mean, it was going to be like, and you got, and it's leaving pretty soon, so you got to go. So here we take off. John and I have had several songs. One has been our song, but there have been a couple of other songs that were just precious to us. And there was this one song that would come on, and John would always poke me. He goes, there's your song, just to make me laugh. As we're running up the escalator to get onto the tram to get this other plane, what plays over the intercom? That song. And that was just mere hours after he had passed. I get home. I'm in the kitchen. There are some people there with me. And I decide to take the dogs out into the backyard, come back inside, and one of my friends was standing in the kitchen. The overhead lights are buzzing. They've never buzzed before. And there's this fog, this cloud that passes in front of my friend in the kitchen. And I'm looking at it and I'm blinking and it's still there. And then finally, after a few seconds, it just dissipated. That night, I had my first, I didn't realize it at the time, but I had my first visit. I never had a chance to say goodbye to John. That night he came back and we had our goodbye. I can still see him even now. I know what he was wearing. Exactly. It was just so real. And there was somebody there with him, probably his own guide, taking care of him, just kind of off to the side. I knew there was somebody there. I didn't know who it was, but I knew that there was somebody there with him, kind of like taking care of him. But he came back and we had our goodbye.
Couple things to unpack here. One is the dream visit. You know that it's a visit. I mean, you can recount this in great detail years later.
Mm.
It felt real. You were there. And it's very interesting that you picked up on a helper that was there because the spirit people tell us a lot of times that there are those whose job it is on the other side to teach them to communicate, to break through, pierce the veil. And so you picked up on maybe a helper or maybe one of his loved ones. I imagine, though, if it was his mom, she would have probably jumped in and said hello
It couldn't
because
have been his mom because she was still here in the physical.
here. Okay. All right. Wow. And again, we see the electronics, the flashing lights. I mean, so lights, numbers, recurring numbers, songs that play right as you're thinking of them. There are all these different things that you can find and look for. But there's also people that actually make a concerted effort to meet with their partner or other loved one through a guided meditation and imagery, inviting a dream visit. And so there's going to be some people listening to this saying, I ask all the time, show yourself to me, let me see you, let me feel you, and nothing happens. I want to get into what's worked. And we're recording this um, November 18th. We're coming up on holidays right now. And I know it's not just the holidays that are especially hard, but there are a lot of people hurting and they're not sure that they want to celebrate. And so I'd like to share with them how you connect so that people can try this out with their time over the holidays. Maybe they've got the week off or a long weekend, or maybe they have to work, but they still want to connect for Christmas and New Year's and all of that. So, Mary Beth, I know you do a lot of this connecting, and you even have a group that teaches people how to make that connection. Can you just give us a little example of, what kinds of methods you use?
Well, thank you. Yeah, we do have a Facebook group and a Zoom group that meets every week, and the topic of holidays has come up recently for that exact reason. And a lot of people do, when you have a big group, a lot of people are in all different stages of their grief journey or whatever, and some people are brand new to it, and some people have been at it for years, and so a lot of people, especially the people who are new to it, they really have difficulty with the holidays. And I have to say, I have to confess that when Paul passed, the holidays, I remember thinking to myself, well, the holidays, I'm like super miserable today. Tomorrow's Christmas. I'll be super miserable tomorrow, and then I'll be super miserable the day after. So I never really had a sense of dread. It just felt like it was just another day to like be really in a lot of pain. But at the same time, I have to say that even before Paul passed, getting back to Abraham Hicks said that the most important thing, first of all, they say there is no death. Your loved one has gone nowhere. They're right there with you. So I clung to that. And they said that the most important thing that you can do when your beloved makes their death transition is to help yourself feel as good as possible. And so right from day one, not even counting the holidays, right from day one, it was my mission to make myself feel as good as I could with the end goal in mind that then I would be able to more easily sense Paul with me because he was feeling fine. He's high flying, he's feeling great. So not only on holidays, but really every day, I really set my sights on feeling better. And and like many people in our situations, when it first happens, they do everything they can. Like they read all the books and they look at all the videos and they join different groups and all this stuff, which is all the things that I did as well. But one thing that I learned to tell our viewing audience that was very helpful is when you do that deep dive to find ways to connect, you're going to encounter information that does not make you feel good, like different ideas. And that's very personal to each person. Somebody who finds past life regression really very exciting, somebody else can be very turned off by it. So what I learned was to only pay attention and only focus on those things when I was learning about the afterlife that helped me feel good. That was my mantra. You have to feel good. You have to feel good. And it didn't take, it wasn't 3 days that I felt better. It took about 18 months. And really, it's a mindset. And for example, I didn't call myself a widow. I would say, we're still married. I'm his wife, or I've heard now more recently, afterlife wife. So I like that. But as far as the holidays and things go, what I also learned, not immediately, but over time, what I learned was instead of dreading them, was to celebrate them. Say if it was, I don't know, a birthday or an anniversary or his angelversary, I would take a picture of Paul to one of our favorite restaurants and prop it up on the table. And when the wait staff came over, I would say, yes, I'll have the potato encrusted salmon. Oh, and this is my husband. My husband passed over. He's on the other side now, but he's with me always. And invariably, that would begin a discussion. I remember one young waitstaff, a young boy, said, "My grandmother just died." And so we had to talk about that. And I didn't feel foolish or ridiculous doing it, and it helped me. And so even to this day, on Valentine's Day, I order a big heart-shaped pizza, and we have on Paul's birthday, I get a big fancy cake, I put candles on it. I sing happy birthday, which she says that's not really necessary, but I do. I sing happy birthday. And then I always I cut two pieces of cake, one for him and one for me, because, and I eat both of them because when your most precious person's on the other side, sacrifices must be made. Why did
Okay, that's amazing. That's amazing. Have you ever had a waiter just sort of be uncomfortable or not want to engage with what you were doing?
That's never happened to me? And I don't go around tapping people on the shoulder and, like making them listen to me. I don't think it's my responsibility to change everybody's thoughts about this, but I want to be comfortable enough to, to say, here's my husband. And one more thing I'll show you. This was a gift, speaking of the holidays, because um, I founded this group with my now friend William Murray, a man I've never met whose wife passed. And William always said, with the sign things, if sometimes you get a lot of signs in the beginning and then they seem to peter out and people panic. And I learned this from William. I thought this was so great. I'd love to pass this on. That he said, this is a relationship like any relationship. And there's a give and take. Excuse me. There's a give and take. And so if you're not getting signs, try giving signs. And so every day he used to say he would pour a cup of coffee for his wife Irene when he made his own coffee. So I started doing that. And I would tell people that. If people came over to my house for lunch, I would set a place for Paul or at least pour him a cup of coffee. And then my daughter one year for Christmas, she's a nurse, but she likes to do pottery where you throw it on a wheel and everything. And so for Christmas, she presented me with coffee cups, one for me with M on it. I don't know if you can see that, M, and one for Paul.
Oh,
So we could have our coffee together. And I sort of feel like I'm, bringing this new sensibility in a gentle way to other people who are so afraid of celebrating the holidays because we have our person. We found our most wonderful person. We're so, so fortunate. They're with us, and what's ahead of us is beyond the magnificence of any magnificent description you could come up with.
And I have the interview with you and William together. I'll link it with the description here. It's definitely take some time out and watch that interview. You guys together sharing so many tips about making the connection. And in no uncertain terms, you've decided that you work with people who are not like dating and not looking for another relationship, like you've given them a safe place. I think that's remarkable because I hear from people. I went to dinner with my friends and they had set me up and not told me, and here's this person here, and I'm not interested. Well, that's, it's an individual decision. Are you going to date again? You guys have had a couple of marriages. It's not like, oh, I've only had one person in my life all the time. But sometimes we come to this point in our life where we say, I'm continuing this relationship in this way, and there isn't room for someone else. So people are listening, if anybody's trying to make you feel guilty for not, quote, moving on, ignore them. It's your decision if you're going to find the new person or not. And both paths are valid. So thank you so much for that. Diane, did your transition of your amazing son, Matthew, in any way prepare you for the transition of your husband, Sal?
Oh, absolutely. It did. It did indeed. My son Matthew, who passed away in 2014, January 2014, he was 35 years old when he passed, and it was a tragic car accident. It just happened over, like in the matter of seconds, and he was gone. Uh, his passing opened me up to learn more about the afterlife and what happens when you die and what's going on over there. And it led me to study and read and follow certain people and learn a lot about the spirit world, which was very helpful because at the time Matthew passed, my husband Sal was in the mid stages of Lewy body dementia, and it was becoming quite a challenge to take care of him. And Matt had been my backup to come and help me out when I needed help. Um, with Sal going through dementia, there were often moments where he seemed to be talking to people who weren't there. Because I had learned about the afterlife and the spirit world, I accepted that Sal was talking to spirit people. And so I would ask him, so who are you talking to and who's around and anybody I know? And every now and then it was somebody, that I couldn't recognize. So I'd ask somebody in the family if they knew who he meant when he said so and so. And they'd say, oh, yeah, he worked with him back in the, 70s. It's like, okay, that's cool. But Sal would also talk about my son, Matthew, coming in and having discussions with Sal. And that always tickled me to have Matthew coming in to talk to his stepdad and give him advice and give him encouragement. And one of the big things that Sal relayed, a couple of them, one was, oh, my mom and Matthew came to visit me and they were talking and it was really nice to see them. And the thing is that Matthew had never met Sal's mother. She had died back in the 50s. So I thought that was really awesome that Sal's mom and his son, basically Matt, were hanging out in heaven together. But as Sal got closer to that end point where he would be passing, he shared with me a very phenomenal story. And he said that Matthew had come to see him, and Matthew had told him that, hey, Pop, um, I'm learning how to help people who are passing over. There's somebody teaching me. So when you die, when you pass over, I'm going to be there with you. I'm going to help you come over to the spirit world. And that just really filled my heart up with love because I could see that that would be something my son would do, that he would have been there when it was time for, the man he called Papa to transition over. So I'd say that Matthew's passing really helped me a lot and opened up that world because had I not been aware of the afterlife and what's going on over there from my son and reading and learning so much because of his passing, I would have followed the advice of the hospice people who would say, oh, they're just hallucinating and, it's the medication and, there's really nothing going on. I knew better. I knew better. My husband was talking to his people who were over on the other side. And I thought that was just the best thing ever. And I can't wait to join them over there at some point and have some conversations about that. Like, so,
Well, now,
whoa, that's
how do
cool.
you, how are you separating out who to sign is from when the sign comes.
Yeah, because I'm getting signs from both of them, and it can get a little bit tricky. But my son, his signs tend to be something like bluebirds, and he plays with the electronics in the house. He plays with the ceiling fan. He plays with the television. He's really good at that. Sometimes there's songs that come in. He had Alexa play a song the other day that was one he would have liked, but I had no clue what it was. Something Jay-Z and Alicia Keys. I don't know who they were, but it's playing on the Alexa the other day, just in his room, just at random. That would be Matthew signs. Sal signs are more like hummingbirds. Ravens are big with him. He gives me the falling stars. He gives me songs that I recognize. I could tell Alexa, well, play a song from Sal, and Alexa will find a song that is a direct connection to Sal. And I think Sal has somehow influenced Alexa to do that. So I have a good time with that. Turn on the radio and I'll in the car and I'll be thinking of Sal. It's like, I need a song from you, and turn it on and there'll be a Santana song. And it's like, okay, that's pretty cool, Sal. So I get the different signs. I have a different feeling between the two of them. So it's easier to discern if it's Sal or Matt, and sometimes they come in together. And one time they both sent me hummingbirds, which were pretty phenomenal at the time. And the birds, one's tapping at the window and the other one's got his little wings out on the screen. And it's like, okay, the tapper would be Sal getting my attention, and the other one's Matthew showing off. So that was pretty cool.
So
So
you're trusting your intuition and you're
yeah.
making notes. And I don't want to give away a bunch of stuff in your book. People can buy your book and find out. But bluebirds were an amazing gift to you after your son had passed, before you even knew. And the name of the book is Living and Loving Life All Day, Every Day. So I highly recommend it. And Joy, you literally wrote the book on having your partner pass. I will never leave you. So, can you tell us what is the inspiration for writing the book? Because it'd be so easy just to go within, keep your little journals and enjoy them and get your signs and meet in meditation, but you sort of bared your soul. Why?
The first couple of years were very hard. I don't remember too much of even the first year. It was a blur. There were some significant signs that John sent me, and I started journaling. So I started keeping track of all of what was happening. And the thing with journaling was someone had told me that was a good thing to do. So I tried it, and I was writing in third person and it just wasn't working. And so what I decided to do is when I journal, I write as if I'm writing a letter to John. So it's like, I'll give the date, the salutation, whatever I want to call him that day. And I'll say, this happened today, or thank you for sending me this sign. And then I'll record the sign, whatever it was. And so that started me on my journey about keeping track of things. I had two friends, one whose husband had passed away the year before John, and one whose husband was, we call it dwindling. He was slowly leaving her. And so we had thought we would each write a book together about our experiences, and that never came to pass. But in the process of that, my book started to take form. And so it was several years after John had passed away before I started writing the book. And I wrote it in three parts. One was a memoir about my life with John. The second part is the signs that he was sending me and what I was experiencing. And then the third part that I wrote was actually almost like a how-to about explaining what signs are and how to discern them and how to experience them and even ask for them.
Have you ever asked for a sign and it came a different way?
I got two very big signs from John. Back in 2018, I was diagnosed with breast cancer and I was looking at surgery, and it was scary. And so I told John, if he had been here at the time, he would have been my rock, but he wasn't. And so I said, I need to know that you're here with me. Send me a sign. And I didn't care what kind it was. I just knew I know it when I see it, kind of a thing. I had a security system in the house at the time. And in order to turn the security system on, you either had to go into the app on the phone and do several steps, or you had to go to the keypad on the wall and several steps to initiate it. I'm walking down the hall toward the bedroom this one particular day, maybe about a week or so before the surgery. And all of a sudden, the security system just alarmed. And this voice came out of the box and said, I forget what she said, but basically, system on, whatever. I'm thinking, okay, well, there's no way that happened just by itself. Okay, so that was a good one, John. Thank you. I go to bed 2 nights later, and I wake up in the middle of the night, and the TV was on. So I turned the TV off. I go to roll over to go back to sleep, and I hear this shh kind of a noise. And I look up, there was a fireplace in the bedroom that John had built, but I didn't want to have a wooden fire going anymore because of the possible danger of it. So I had my handyman put in an electric insert that would mimic a fire, but would be safer. And you had to turn it on with a remote control, which was sitting on the mantle. I sit up in bed, the fireplace is going. So I had to get up out of the bed, get the remote control, and turn it off. There's no way it would have come on just by itself. It was like a cat had touched it because it's up on the mantle. So I think, okay, John, I know you're here with me. Thank you.
I think it's only the most materialist scientist would sit on the fence, because the signs, the contact, it has this cumulative effect on you. One thing happening one time is really nice. Second time really nice. The third through 3,000th time is you're living with the relationship as though it still exists because it does. And so I want to ask each of you in closing, if there's something you want to share to encourage the person that they're coming up to their maybe only the first, second, or third set of holidays, birthdays, anniversaries. It's new. They're not sure. They don't want to be disappointed, so they don't want to try meeting and meditation. They don't want to be disappointed, so they don't want to try the dream visit. Anything that you want to say?
I'm going to confess that I belong to a few groups. Our group that we have is not a grief group. We don't call it a grief group. We call it a group that supports each other in this trans-dimensional relationship. And like you were saying before, that a lot of people, they urge you to repartner and all that. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's just that there's not a lot of societal support for choosing to remain in the relationship for the rest of your life, especially, by the way, if you're very young, if you're a young person. But having said that about that, when I don't really participate, but I just read what other people say about their grief journey in more traditional groups. And there are people who suffer for decades. He's gone. I'll never see him again. She was the light of my life, and I'll never have her with me at Christmas. We'll never spend a vacation together. It's heartbreaking because a lot of it is what I think the core is your mindset about it. And so from the time Paul passed, I never spoke of him in the past tense. I might say, well, Paul worked here and when he was on earth, but I would always say, Paul is with me. I'd say to myself, if I went out with a group of people and everybody was coupled up and I was a single person, I never felt sorry. I would find a way to appreciate the situation. So I would say, well, everybody has their husband and that's nice for them, but I don't want their husband and I have mine. And I would have this little, conversation with myself in my head. I would always find a way to appreciate whatever situation I was in, rather than focusing on the pain. And believe me, I grieved heavily for a very long time. So it's not like I don't know what that's like. It's just that continually I moved my awareness in positive directions so that I could feel Paul with me. So to generate a mindset that they're here, they're not missing a thing. They're with you every holiday. They're with you every day. They're with you through every life challenge and every celebration. They are there with us and with you. So that was helpful to me. Thank you.
Wow, that's beautifully said. Joy, what would you like to share?
I have a real prejudice about the phrase moving on. I refuse to use that. It's moving forward. And when I move forward, I bring John with me. That's not to minimize the fact that the early stages of grief were horrible, but it evolves. And I got really strong, noticeable signs in the beginning because I think that's what I needed. And John knew that. And so the signs, I mean, I got the dream visits and messages and songs and all kinds of things. But we've maintained a relationship over time. It's been 15 years. And so just like we were comfortable with each other in physical, we're comfortable with each other now in spirit. And we are able to communicate back and forth, and it doesn't take a whole lot of effort. I get number. John's favorite number to send me is 43. If I'm doing something and I'm driving along in the car and I just happen to be thinking about him and whatever, I'll look over at the dashboard and it'll be 7:43 on the clock or something like that. Even this morning, I was making breakfast for the animals, thinking about this upcoming webinar together and thinking about John, obviously, and what we're going to be talking about and all this kind of stuff. And I look over at the Alexa clock and it was 6:43. So John was saying, "Hi, I'm here. I'll be with you when you're on the webinar." Just little things like that. I've made customs over time. Every Christmas, John used to always give me little stuffed teddy bears, for it's Valentine's Day or whatever. Every Christmas, I buy a little teddy bear for him, and I mark the date on the little tag on it. I've got quite the collection at this point, but that's how, I still buy him that Christmas present every year. Anniversaries, I'll have a piece of cake and a glass of Prosecco and, toast our marriage together. On his birthday or mine, I'll have a piece of cake and put a candle on it and we celebrate my birthday together, things like that. So I keep the relationship fresh that way.
Ooh, my head is spinning with the romance. I just love this.
It
Um,
doesn't mean that you can't still make memories.
yes, yeah, yes, everyone hear that. You're still making memories. And Diane.
Well, there's a lot to pack in here for advice for someone who might be going through this as a new kind of grief or someone who's been doing this for a long time. And I think everybody has a different way of processing that grief. For me, I was able to process Sal's loss a little easier than losing my son. My son was a bit of a shock. But by the time Sal had transitioned on, I had reached an acceptance that we are eternal beings. We never die. Love doesn't die. And because Sal and I did have a very strong relationship and a strong love, I knew that he was always around me and would always be around me. And we had done this in prior lives, and perhaps we'll be doing this in future lives. I just feel that he's around. Yes, I've missed him on many, many occasions. Yes, I still get teary-eyed and emotional at certain things that might trigger that. But over time, I've gotten a little better at accepting that, well, he's a part of my life. It's just that I'm not seeing him physically, or I'm not maybe, talking to him and getting an interchange in a conversation, but he still hears me. So I continue with talking to him a lot, asking him for dream visits. For certain special occasions, I will, toast him with a little tequila, or I'll go to our favorite restaurant and have we used to have beer and hamburgers. I'd have that in his honor. I still make some of his favorite meals here, and as I'm eating them and eating the leftovers, because I always make more than I need, I always remember him. I'll make a bowl of menudo. He loved menudo, and it's always Sal. It's his essence that's in that dish. So to have that love, to have that commitment that transcends different lifetimes, even though he's not here physically, he's still here spiritually, and I know that. And I miss him dearly. I do. But I know that at some point I will join him wherever he is, and we'll look forward to whatever our next plans are as far as incarnating, if we so choose to do that. And if not, we'll just float all over the universe and have fun. So I would just say to people, if grief is new to you, that's okay. Let it run through you. Do your crying, do your rituals, do whatever it is that makes you feel connected to that person that you've lost, because you really haven't lost them. They're always there and they're watching you. And this will come through with mediumship readings that, your loved one says, oh, I saw when you cut that rose and put it in the vase, just like I used to do for you. Oh, I remember when you made that meal and you just enjoyed it. I love that. I was there with you. They're there with you. In time, you learn to accept it, you learn to hear from them, you get the signs, you're open to that. But let that grief process right now. And remember, love will never die. It's always there. Once united, you're never divided.
The relationship continues in a new way. Now, our last toast of the hour to each of you. It's true, death will never do us part. And thank you for tea time together. Joy Collins, Diane Calderon, Mary Beth Span-Mink, thank you and cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susanne.
Visit our website, carefreemedium.com, or find us on social media @carefreemedium. Thanks for supporting Carefree and Conscious.